The action begins in the 58th year of the 20th century. The English estate Darlington Hall passes to a new owner, an American Jack Lewis. The previous owner, Lord Darlington, died, and only his elderly butler James Stevens, a pedantic man devoted to duty, living within the framework of official etiquette, remains in the house. After a conversation with Lewis, Stevens receives permission to take a car and rest for a few days. In fact, he is going to visit the former housekeeper, Miss Kenton, who worked with him many years ago in this estate. He hopes to persuade her to return. During the trip, Stevens remembers the past. We are transported to the times between the First and Second World Wars. Preparations are underway at Darlington Hall for a diplomatic meeting. Stevens monitors every aspect, from food to the behavior of the servants. His life is entirely subordinated to serving the master and the house. At the same time, a new housekeeper, Miss Kenton, gets a job at the estate. She is energetic, experienced, has a strong character, and notices that the work of the butler and servants is organized with strict discipline. Gradually, a working relationship is established between her and Stevens. Meanwhile, important meetings are held more and more often in the house. Lord Darlington, convinced that the Treaty of Versailles was unfair to Germany, begins to participate in the policy of appeasement. He organizes visits of German diplomats, aristocrats, and British lords, discusses the future of Europe. Stevens remains aloof from political ideas, considering his task to be only to do his job impeccably. One day, Lord Darlington orders the dismissal of 2 maids of Jewish origin at the request of the German delegation. Miss Kenton protests, threatens to quit, but stays. Stevens does not interfere with this decision and carries out the instructions of the owner. Stevens continues to manage the staff and ignore personal matters. Miss Kenton, noticing his coldness and detachment, periodically tries to get closer, but Stevens strictly separates the professional from the personal. They are increasingly alone in the evenings, but any of her attempts to talk to him end in nothing. Meanwhile, she receives a letter from another man courting her and decides to marry him. Stevens does not react. She leaves the estate, gets married, and leaves in the 30s of the 20th century. Lord Darlington increasingly interferes in politics. He organizes conferences with the participation of Nazi representatives, participates in negotiations, hoping to avoid war, but in fact becomes a conduit for German propaganda in Britain. His connections with Germany grow, but by 1939 it becomes clear that he was wrong. The war begins anyway. After the war, the Lord's reputation is ruined. His name appears in the newspapers in the context of collaboration. Politicians and aristocrats avoid him. He loses influence and then dies. The estate is put up for sale. Returning to 1958, Stevens arrives in a coastal town. He finds Mrs. Ben, as the former Miss Kenton is now called. They walk along the embankment, drink tea, discuss the past. She tells him that her marriage was not happy, that she thought about returning many times, but now her daughter is expecting a child, and she wants to stay close to her family. Stevens says that he has a new owner now and that he still needs a good housekeeper, but she refuses. They say goodbye. She gets on a bus and leaves. Stevens returns to Darlington Hall. On the way, he talks to a stranger in a cafe and says that perhaps he should be less formal and try to please the new owner. He notices a bird flying to the ceiling of the winter garden. He helps it fly out of the window, remaining alone against the backdrop of the old house.